Hello everyone, well after exactly 3 months since the 2024 UK general election, it is time to do our first opinion poll tracker video here on the Gavin Partridge YouTube channel. So we have had some polls since the general election, not all that many of them, but there have been a few, and there have been enough for electoral calculus to a few days ago produce a new forecast for the next UK general election, and I'm going to get on with that for you in a second. So quite an exciting video this after 3 months of virtual inactivity on the channel. We're back with our opinion poll tracker video. So more about that in a second, but just say that if you're enjoying the content on the channel at the moment, please do like, share and subscribe, and thank you so much everybody for doing that. So just to recap, at the last general election, Labour won an overall majority of 172 seats on 33% of the national share of the vote. That's two big numbers to keep in mind as we project forward to the next election, which will probably be held either in 2028 or 2029. I think the Parliament can go on to the summer of 2029, and then, there has to be a general election. Anyway, got a bit of tickle in the throat. Anyway, here we go. Let's count it down and have a look at the prediction for the next UK general election for the first time of this Parliament. So in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, here we go. And boom! And electoral calculus are predicting that at the next UK general election, based on opinion polls conducted, I think, during September, Labour will have an overall majority of 82 seats. That's still a pretty big majority, but is substantially down on the 172 that they had in July. So clearly there have been quite a significant reduction in the Labour's polling position and, their overall general election prediction. So let's go through the numbers, shall we? Why not do that? What am I doing? Okay, so I'm going to get the highlights, don't I? So here we go then. Current prediction, as of the 27th of September, is for Labour to have an overall majority of 82 seats. We've got our party columns just here. We've got our 2024 votes and seats columns just there. Predicted share of the vote just there. And then we've got our low to high seat ranges just here, with the central range just there. So at the last general election, the Conservative Party had a catastrophic result, their worst result in their 200-year history, going down to just 121 seats on only 24.4% of the overall vote. And they've barely moved from that on the most recent opinion polls. Their central share of vote on the polls recently is 24.8%. So the Conservatives are roughly where they were, at the election. Nevertheless, that improves their seat result. That improves their seat result quite significantly. So they are now on a central prediction of 157 seats. There's a margin of error with that, so they could still go as low as 69 seats, total oblivion, and they could be as high as 272 seats. Labour at the last election were on 34.7% of the national share of vote. That includes Northern Ireland. Just look at GB. I think they're only on 33.8 or something. Anyways, let's say 34.7. That gave them 412 seats. So they have seen a nearly 5% reduction, 4% reduction on that, going down to a predicted share of votes of 30.6 seats, which gives them a central seat prediction of 366 seats. At the low end of the range, they could go as low as 196. At the high end of the range, they could be on 424. Liberal Democrats at the last election were on 12.6% of the vote, with a total seat score of 72 seats. So that was their best result in history, the best Liberal result since I think about the 1923 general election. They're barely moved either, so they are on 12.7% of the prediction share of the vote now. The central seat prediction of 72 seats could be as low as 43, could be as high as 89. And Reform were on 14.7% of the vote at the last election. They are now on a predicted share with 5 seats. They are now on a predicted share of vote of 18.3. So it looks as though the switch has been from Labour to Reform over the course of this Parliament so far over the past 3 months. Gives them a central seat prediction of 9 seats. They could be as low as 9, but at the high end they could be as high as 131 seats. Greens were on 6.9% of the vote at the election with 4 seats. They are now on 7.7, so just up a little bit. Still a central prediction of 4 seats. Could be as low as 3, could be as high as 12. SNP were on 2.6% of the vote at the election with 9 seats. We're on 2.7% now with a central prediction of 10 seats, up 1. They could be as high as 38, could be as low as 6. Plaid were on 4 seats. I should say. The election, the prediction still has them on 4 seats. Could be as high as 6, could be as low as 2. And then we've got others down here with 10 seats. Sinn Féin 7, DUP 5, SDLP 2, and other Northern Irish parties down here. So that gives Labour an overall predicted majority of 82 seats at the next UK general election, down from 172 3 months ago. So, sorry everyone, so these are the opinion polls that we have had up to the beginning of October throughout this Parliament. So you see, not all that many, but there has been a real lull in opinion polling over the past few months. Part of that is just because I think a lot of people have polled out, and a lot of companies are paying for this, the newspapers, the media, websites and whatnot, that pay for the polls. They've probably blown most of their allocated money on the polls that conducted during the general election. So that's part of the reason. The other reason for that is a review going on into what happened at the last election with the pollsters, due to the fact that they greatly overstated Labour by about 6-7% of the vote, actually, compared to what Labour actually got in the end. It was still enough for Labour to get an enormous majority, that there was a pretty serious polling error actually at the last general election, with Labour very much overstated, and the pollsters therefore are conducting a review at the moment into what, if anything, they can do to try and stop the overstatement of Labour within their opinion polls. Nevertheless, there has been several polls. So the very first poll of the Parliament came from We Think. It was back on the 12th of July, which gave Labour a 19% lead, very large lead, of course, there. 39% for Labour, 20% for Conservatives, Reform on 16%, Liberal Democrats on 11%, Greens on 9%, and others on 5%. After that, we had another We Think poll, which was much closer to the general election result. And by the way, can I tell you what the general election result was? Oh yeah, there it is. So the general election result was Labour 34.7, Conservatives 24.4. We had Reform 14.7, Liberal Democrats 12.5. So sorry again, everyone. Greens 6.9 and others 6.8. It was a 10.3% overall lead in terms of GB, Great Britain, for Labour. In terms of the UK, so that's adding in the Northern Irish parties, the Labour lead was 33.7, with around 10% lead. Right, so the next We Think poll was released on the 25th to 26th of July, and that was much more in line with the general election result. It had Labour on 36%, Conservatives on 22%, Reform on 17%, Liberal Democrats on 11%, Greens on 7%, others on 7%, and an overall Labour lead of 14%. Then we had Stonehaven, again, Labour 34%, Conservatives 22, Reform 17, Liberal Democrats 12, 9 for Greens, 6 for others. BMG was our next poll that was released on the 5th to the 7th of July, and they found the Conservatives on 24%, Labour on 33%, Reform on 18%, Liberal Democrats on 12%, Greens on 8%, others on 4%, an overall Labour lead of 9%. We think came along next with 33% Conservative for Labour, 20% Conservative, 21% Reform, 11% Green, and 8%, 11% Liberal Democrats, 8% Green, 8% others. Right, then we had our first more in common poll of this Parliament. Very bad news. This was for Labour. They went down just 29% on that poll, 25% for the Conservatives, Reform on 18%, Liberal Democrats on 14%, Greens on 8%, and others on 8%, an overall Labour lead of just 4% there over the Conservatives. Then Techni was our next poll. So the Independent, a little bit better for Labour, this one, on an overall 12% lead, 33% Labour, 21% Conservatives. Another more in common poll was released towards the end of September, again giving Labour just a 4% lead, so Labour on 30%, Conservatives on 26%, Reform on 18%, Liberal Democrats on 13%, Greens on 8%, others on 6%. The two most recent polls have been two Techni polls. One at the end of September with Labour on 32%, Conservatives on 22%, Reform on 18%, Liberal Democrats on 30%, Green on 7%, others on 8%, and overall Labour of 10%, and meant the most recent Techni poll, first poll of October, just here, again gave Labour a 31% share of votes, so down one, Conservatives on 23% of vote, up one, Reform on 18% of the vote, unchanged, Liberal Democrats 13% unchanged, Greens 7% unchanged, and others 8% unchanged. An overall Labour lead on that poll of 8% there. So clearly the polls we've had, we haven't had all that many of them, the polls we've had are clearly showing a drop in support for Labour compared to where they were at the general election. We haven't had any polls from the biggest pollsters, which of course is like YouGov and IPSOS, formerly Murray and IPSOS Murray, and Survation and Savanta. So the really big names within the polling field haven't done any polls yet since the election. And that's a little bit frustrating, but again, I think most of them are reviewing their methodology, Opinium, as well as another one that we haven't had since the election. So I think most of them are... I think most of them are reviewing their methodologies and trying to see what they can do to take out the overstatement of Labour there. We will start getting more polls coming up. I would have thought probably starting next week, actually, once the Conservative Party conference is done and dusted, have been taking place this week. And the polls will really start coming along, I suppose, when the Conservatives choose their next leader. And then, then we'll probably start seeing quite a lot more in way of polling. A lot of what is happening with Labour is happening due to the fact that Keir Starmer, Prime Minister, is seeing quite a significant reduction in his personal ratings. So we have got some leadership approval polling here from some of the biggest polls, actually. Whilst they haven't done voting intention polls, they have been doing polls looking at how the leaders are getting on. And you'll notice a lot of red there now for Starmer. So back at the very beginning of the Parliament in July, we see Keir Starmer with generally positive leadership approval ratings. There was this YouGov here that had him negative. There was a YouGov on the 5th of the 8th of July that had him negative. But otherwise, we do see quite a bit of green there for Sir Keir in terms of his overall leadership approval rating. But from the beginning of August, it's just continuously negative and getting more negative as we go along. So, for example, the last leadership approval found Sakir with a approval rating of -30, which is absolutely appalling for so early on in the prime ministership. That's kind of level that you would expect to see after a prime minister has been around for several years. You know, people got heartily fed up with them. Though Opinion found that Sakir had a negative approval rating of 53 and a positive approval rating of 23%, giving him an overall net approval rating of -30, which is actually worse than Rishi, who's just lost the general election. His overall approval rating, of course, he'll be gone in a few weeks, but his overall approval rating on that poll was -26. Nigel Farage on an overall approval rating of -11, and Sareb Davy on -1. So Sareb the most popular of the four of them. And like we see other polls as well, so we had YouGov here, which gave Sakir again a negative approval rating of -30, so 30% approving, 60% disapproving. Overall, his leadership, overall approval rating of -30. That was worse, but Rishi Sunak on that poll had an overall approval rating of -44. But you get the idea of what's going on here. It's something that I highlighted, or have been highlighting a lot on these tracker videos, that Sakir Starmer never had a huge amount of overall approval. Let's just go back here to the prediction. So as I've been highlighting on the personal rating for leadership approval ratings, Sakir was always struggling as leader of the opposition. And whilst Labour did manage to pull off a big majority, they did get a landslide, and the Conservatives had a catastrophic result. It was primarily down to the unpopularity of the Conservatives rather than the popularity of Labour, and the unpopularity of the continuous stream of Conservative leaders, from Boris Johnson to Liz Truss to Rishi Sunak, and of course you got Cameron and May before them. You know, but the constant swapping of leaders for the Conservative government took them down to an extremely unpopular level. And so the election was primarily a vote against the Conservatives rather than a vote for Labour. And I always said, you know, through the last Parliament, that given we just wasn't really seeing Sakir's popularity, you know, being up there with the most popular leaders of the opposition, which in recent years has tended to be Tony Blair and David Cameron. You know, they were both very popular leaders of the opposition, particularly Tony Blair. I said that we would likely see Sakir Starmer and the Labour government becoming unpopular quite quickly through this Parliament. But I am very surprised at how quickly that has happened. I was thinking maybe a year or two, you know, to get to this kind of level, and it's happened in 3 months. But anyway, we shall see what happens. That is the first Opinion Poll Tracker video anyway, so we'll probably do another one either in November or December, depends how quickly the polls start rolling. I think they'll start coming along much more regularly once the Conservatives have their leader in place. So we might have quite a quiet month for October, and then I would imagine next month and into December we'll see the polls picking up. These videos will go once a month. These tracker videos will go once a month, you know, shortly. But for the time being, maybe, you know, the next one will be in a couple of months. We'll just see how many polls are released, you know, over the next month during October. That's brought you up to date with all of the debate. But of course, we've got the US presidential election going on then in 20-minute video, but have lots to talk about. Yes, we've got the US presidential election coming up on the 5th of November, of course. So I'll probably do a couple more polls about between now and the 5th of November when the presidential election will be taking place. A couple of videos probably coming up later on this month for that. But in terms of the UK general election, the next UK general election, that's brought you up to date. Okay, if you enjoyed the video, please like, share, subscribe, thanks so much for doing that, and we'll have more for you very soon. For this one though, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.